I think we could be well above $200,000.
Today I interviewed George of CryptosRUs
I honestly think that we will end this year fantastic and we will build upon that momentum next year.
on how to best prepare as a crypto investor headed into 2025.
A lot of models and charts show that 200, 250, 300 is within, the realm of possibility. And I believe that is where we're heading.
We discuss worst case scenario, what could go wrong,
Where Bitcoin would be by the end of 2025, let's say the worst case scenario.
best strategy to sell your altcoins as Bitcoin rallies. What is your profit-taking strategy? Like, when do you sell your crypto? George shares a new strategy for the first time ever.
Okay, so something new that I'm going to try this cycle.
And watch today's whole video as George shares 5 altcoins for 2025 with the most potential.
Everything that I'm going to name at least has a 10x potential. That's how much I believe in them.
Click the like button right now to support me, and let's start. George, remind us, what is your background with crypto?
Ooh, let's go back to the beginning. And in 2013, that's how I found Bitcoin when it first hit $1,000. And I was in IT prior, so it's kind of like in my wheelhouse. Unfortunately, I got burned in the last recession, 2008. So I wasn't paying close attention to any kind of investments out there, including Bitcoin. Otherwise, I would have, gotten in Bitcoin much earlier. But I got in 2013. I thought it was brilliant. Didn't quite actually understand it, not like I do now, but I thought it was brilliant that we had this digital currency that was decentralized and people around the world can actually mine it. It's almost like people had their own money printing machines. And that's essentially what it was. And that's how I got in, and then went through a couple cycles, up and downs, and that led me to where I am today.
Can you recall a time in that period that you were most shaken, like the bear market that scared you the most?
Like I said, I've been in many cycles. Interesting question, because when I got into Bitcoin and then actually specifically Litecoin at that time, I didn't truly understand. So in 2014, when Bitcoin went into a crypto winter, I sold off everything. I was thinking like, oh man, I just caught the tail end of this. I didn't truly understand what Bitcoin meant at the time, so it didn't hit me as much. But I would say the 2018 to 2020 cycle, that's where obviously I came back in 2017, learned more, started my channel, and started really investing once again. And when I saw 2018 hit, I'm like, man, what is going on, right? Did I catch the wrong time once again? And I'm like, no, you know what? I'm gonna learn from my mistakes. I'm gonna stick with it with my channel, which was brand new back then and didn't get a whole lot of views. And I'm gonna stick with my investments. Well, whatever I had in Bitcoin, I kept, and also dollar cost average along the way, right? And it was the right path until 2020 hit, right? We all lived through 2020, the COVID period, pandemic, and Bitcoin was on track to come back, and then boom, we had a flash crash down to 3,800. I'm like, oh my God, right? Like, what is going on here? So I would say that's probably like the scariest crypto winter I've been involved with.
Since then, institutions in the last year, institutions have come in, BlackRock. We've had another halving. The institutions are actively accumulating Bitcoin through the ETFs. That has never happened before in Bitcoin history. What is your outlook for 2025, given that?
Very, very bullish. Every single cycle, we see new narratives play out. The biggest one for this cycle has to be the institutional adoption. They are here. In prior cycles, we've always like speculated, oh, BlackRock may be buying behind the scenes, or this person or that person, they're accumulating behind the scenes. Now we can see it, right? BlackRock's ETF has taken in more than $20 billion. In fact, the fastest growing ETF in history. Let that sink in for a second. Their IBIT Bitcoin ETF trust. That is crazy. And not just them, Fidelity and ARK and Bitwise and everyone else, they're getting involved. And this is definitely a signal. For the first time in Bitcoin's history, we now truly have institutional adoption. It does show that Bitcoin is obviously maturing, being more accepted. Now we don't hear about, maybe we still do, but I hardly hear about any like major CEOs of banks or financial institutions that's still trying to discredit Bitcoin, besides maybe the ECB or something like
Or
that.
Jamie Dimon.
Yeah, or Jamie Dimon, even though we know JP Morgan involves a lot of activities that include Bitcoin and crypto, so it doesn't quite make sense. But at this point in time, this seems like, yeah, the world has come to embrace that Bitcoin is a new asset, a new digital currency, and it's one that you really can't shut down. So let's embrace it, right? And that's what we're seeing. And I think because of it in 2025, we're going to see some staggering numbers.
Nobody is saying that there won't be nasty shakeouts on the way up, as we've seen in every bull market. That will happen. But given that Bitcoin, and this is something that investor Lawrence Lepard has championed many, many times in interviews, Bitcoin is the only asset where as demand grows, you can't make more of it. So for example, when those gold ETFs came into fruition in 2005 or something like that, and institutions could finally accumulate gold in an easy way, you know, they invested in more gold mines. They increased that supply. They had it on the other end. Bitcoin, you can't do that. In fact, we just had a halving, and there's half the supply now coming onto the market. Given that, price-wise, what is your sort of base case and maybe bull case for Bitcoin?
Well, for 2025, you're saying, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard for me. I'm known as one of like the most bullish guys out there. And that's because that's how I feel. And I want my audience, anyone watching, to also feel what I'm feeling. And I prove it with, the growing fundamentals, the macro conditions, the charts, the on-chain metrics and everything, right? So it's hard for me to be bearish. But if I was giving a bearish guess at where Bitcoin would be by the end of 2025, let's say the worst case scenario, I would say worst case scenario by the end of 2025 would still be higher than where it is now. I would say we would probably be around the 70 to 80,000 mark, worst case scenario. But best case scenario, I think we could be well above $200,000. I honestly think that we will end this year fantastic and we will build upon that momentum next year. And, a lot of models and charts show that 200, 250, 300 is within, the realm of possibility. And I believe that is where we're heading.
What's the biggest threat? Like in that worst case scenario, what could go wrong? Because something I love about your channel is you're very realistic and you're showing both sides of the Bitcoin. So what stops that bull run?
That's an interesting question. I think the biggest threat would have to be BlackRock and some of these ETFs. Because right now we know ETFs, the way they work, you have people buying the shares or selling the shares, and then the funds would have to sell or buy Bitcoin, right? That's how it works. And right now we see BlackRock kind of separate itself from everyone else. We see the like Fidelity and ARK and Bitwise, we see a lot of inflows, outflows. Overall, there's a lot more inflows than outflows, but on the bad days, we see them have large outflows. We don't really see that from BlackRock. They've only had like 2 days or 3 days out of like 8-month period where they had small, tiny outflows, but the rest of the time, it's just massive inflows. So Larry Fink and BlackRock, they're doing something different. They're probably using their other funds to buy their own IBIT fund. That's how they're making sure that there are no outflows, right? Worst case scenario, let's say Larry Fink or someone within BlackRock decides to change their mind and maybe they start selling. So maybe during the hottest period in 2025, you see a lot of massive outflows from their ETF. And that kind of disrupts things. And I think that could be that could be like a bearish scenario. Or if BlackRock or Larry Fink does um, does manipulate the market, right? And a lot of people have speculated that they want to control it so they can manipulate it. That could be another thing. But outside of BlackRock, I guess the only other thing would be the macro conditions. Like right now, we have a lot of hope that Fed Chair Powell is going to start cutting the Fed fund rate, and a lot of countries around the world are also doing the same thing. But if they don't do enough, and let's say the US and other countries start going into a recession and the economies worsen and broader markets start selling off, that will definitely affect Bitcoin and crypto as well. So that is also, within my bearish scenario case.
That would definitely affect crypto. Luckily, like the Fed has built up ammunition. So if the traditional markets tank, they can cut rates and keep cutting rates. That's the other side. Obviously, we'll see next year. What is your profit taking strategy? Like, when do you sell your crypto, assuming that we see close to 200?
Okay, so something new that I'm going to try this cycle is basically increase my cash pile percentage. So I think this is a really easy concept, and I'm gonna follow it. And I've been telling my audience this as well. So right now, I would say even in our current environment, having like 25, 30, 35% cash is smart, because when we do have these volatile periods, when we do have these big dips, you're able to buy the dip. You're able to continue to DCA as long as you have cash on the side, right? Now, if you think about it, as we go upwards, as we experience these tremendous price gains, as we move into 2025, that cash pile percentage is going to shrink. Forget the actual amount, but just look at the percentage. So if you start out with 25% cash, and then everything else in your portfolio starts going up, that 25% naturally will shrink to 20%, 15%, 10%, right? So I think a really easy strategy is to stick with the percentage. So as the market is going higher, as my portfolio is getting bigger, I'm going to make sure that cash pile stays at the same percentage, which means it forces me to sell off and take some profits on everything that I have, and making sure that cash pile percentage stays consistent. Now, as we get higher, as Bitcoin reaches 175, 200, 250, I'm going to make sure to increase that cash pile from that 25%, say to 35, say to 45, and maybe I go even really aggressive and go to 75, 80%. I don't think I'll ever try to time the market and say, at this point in time, I'm going to sell off everything. I think I will always leave some. I know I will always leave some Bitcoin or some other crypto in my portfolio. But this time around, I'm going to try to stick with this strategy of having this set percentage and increasing that as we get higher in price.
And when do you start? Like around 100K, or are you starting now? Meaning if Bitcoin goes up 20% and the alts go up 10, are you starting that now?
No, not right now, because knowing that back in March, Bitcoin was already at 73,000 and we're below that, I don't think this is the right time to start taking profits. Although the cash percentage, I do have, and I do think everyone still should have, something on the side, in case we never know, right? If something disastrous happens and Bitcoin falls back to 49,000 next week, or maybe it falls to 30,000, right? You want to be able to buy the dip. So having that cash pile is important. But as for increasing it, I would say that would have to be after 100,000. Then I would start adjusting.
George, what's the best place to buy altcoins? Like, what would you tell your brother or cousin or whatever?
The best place?
Safest, like new people are coming in, they're looking for a recommendation. Where do you buy?
Well, if you're like a US citizen, you live in the US, I mean, you have a lot of options that are very safe, right? Coinbase, of course, comes to mind. Robinhood is another. These are the go-to places. You have Kraken and Gemini. These are the go-to places. Traditionally, they don't have they don't have a lot of offerings in terms of all the newer crypto. But they've been doing a good job at expanding their offering. And these guys that operate in the US are highly, highly scrutinized and looked at by all the jurisdictions, by the states, by all the federal agencies. So if you were going to protect yourself from like, you know, something disastrous, these would be the ways to go, but nothing's guaranteed. So if you get into crypto, starting out with one of these exchanges would be the best bet, but learning self-custody, that has to be like your next step. Everyone should know how to hold their own crypto and not hold on to these exchanges in case something does happen to them. They get hacked, they go under, you know, you want to be protected, right? So self-custody is very, very important. But if people are looking to expand and they want to buy crypto that are not offered on these exchanges, there are two options. You could go with an exchange overseas, or you can learn how to go the DeFi way, the decentralized finance way. And there are a lot of DEXs out there that offer basically the same kind of experience, and all the newest coins could be found on them. But again, in order to do that, you need to learn self-custody first, right? So you need to know how to have your own wallet and know the different types of wallet and know how to connect to a DEX. It's not that complicated, but it is something that's advisable just from the self-custody perspective. But after that, it helps you on your way to learning DeFi as well.
Yeah, I tell people if you're first starting out, and if you're in the US, Coinbase, you just got to learn self-custody. Don't keep your coins on exchanges, trade it and get off it. And then Uniswap, if you want to degen and go and find all the new coins. Now, the trade-off there is anybody can launch a coin and call it anything. So make sure the ticker is right, the contract address is right, because it's decentralized. Scammers can put their coins on there. Real quick, what crypto wallets would you recommend to a friend?
Right now, I would say there are so many options, but you mentioned Coinbase. Coinbase has their own self-custody wallet called Coinbase Wallet. It is different from the platform, but there is an integration so that you can move your crypto over very easily. But something like Coinbase Wallet, Trust Wallet, these are ones that you could download on your phone immediately. They are free to use. You just have to understand that, hey, once you get a crypto onto your wallet, onto your phone, you are in charge of that. All these wallets, it doesn't matter if it's these two or even MetaMask or Phantom, and they're both also great wallets that you can have on your phone or on your mobile browser. They all are self-custody, meaning you have to secure it. They give you a security phrase. They have biometrics on there, your passcode, your face recognition, fingerprint, and all that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the most important thing is that recovery phrase. If you do not secure that, you write it down, or you put it on Dropbox, or you put it, you send it to someone over email. If someone gets hold of that, you know, you will lose everything, right? So that's what most people don't understand. Just because you have crypto in your own wallet does not make it secure. That recovery phrase is what's the most important piece. And that is what people need to figure out how to really secure.
George, final question. And this is something that I think you and me are going to get asked, a lot in the next 6-12 months. What 5 altcoins do you think have the most potential in 2025?
I remember last time we did this, you asked a similar question, like what's the number one altcoin you would buy to make the most money? And I think I said Pepe at the time. And I should have listened to myself because Pepe did extremely well since then. Top 5 altcoins, I'm going to list a few that I truly believe and I think will do very well. Maybe not the most speculative, but I do think everything that I'm going to name at least has a 10x potential. That's how much I believe in them. Number one, I'm just going to go with one that almost everyone knows is Solana, right? Solana has a lot of bad history. It has bad rep from a few, from a few communities. But if you just pay attention to what's going on the chain, Their activity is skyrocketing, their volume, the number of users. Obviously, the meme craze is on Solana. Their Jupiter DEX is fantastic. And you got a lot of dApps, like some big ones like Render and Helium, that have moved to Solana successfully. I believe Solana is going to go very far. Another one I would say is Toncoin. Even though they are in the top 10 right now, they are still smaller, say, compared to Solana. And that's because Ton has made a ton of traction with these very viral games that other chains and communities do not seem to have. So that seems to be their bread and butter, and they don't even really have a lot of meme activity right now. But once they do, I do think they could be definitely a powerhouse. So I do think Toncoin is another one to watch. Another one after that would be Avalanche. Right now, Avalanche is doing okay. They are almost 100% into gaming, right? And we have a lot of subchains that's on Avalanche that are based on gaming. We have a lot of games, even console games on top of Avalanche. You have, old projects. The leaders of 2021, like DeFi King, is also on top of Avalanche. I think gaming narrative hasn't really caught on fire yet, or caught on in general this cycle. But in 2025, if games get hot, Avalanche will benefit greatly from it. And not only that, Avalanche is in memes, they're into RWA, but I think the big push into games could help them tremendously. So that's 3. You wanted 5, right?
That's right. But I'm loving these 3, and I'm loving the perspective you're bringing. Guys, subscribe to George, CryptosRUs, links down below. I know many people already do, but yes, final 2.
Thank you. I would say another one would be ASI, Artificial Superintelligence Alliance. They were known as Fetch AI, and also 2 other projects, that Singularity, Ocean, and Fetch. Yeah, I think it's Fetch AI. 3 companies, 3 AI-based companies combined. Okay, now they're into this one big powerhouse, and they have, or they're going to launch natively on Cardano. And that's interesting. Cardano community loves them. I know Charles loves them too, but ultimately, think about it. They're the biggest AI play in crypto right now. And as AI gets hotter and hotter, all the AI-based companies, or anything that's directly involved or not directly involved, I think they will benefit. But seeing how they are directly involved with AI, founded by some really intelligent people that's been in the AI community for a long time, and plus with the backing of the Cardano community, I think they will do very well this cycle as well. So that's number 4. And then number 5, this is, you know what, I'm going to throw, again, just for the fun of it, but I truly believe that every portfolio should have some memes in there. I'm going to stick with something like Pepe, even though they are much bigger now than before, and there are a million memes out there. Pepe has the benefit of being one of the newer memes, yet still be like almost a blue chip at this point of memes. So you look at what has happened in the last cycle, like with Doge and Shiba, they were already big. And then they went on to do a 10x when the bull market hit. So I see Pepe doing the same thing. And here's the kicker. They're not even listed on Coinbase yet. I can't imagine once Coinbase lists them in the bull market, in the parabolic phase, what that's going to do to them, right? So I think what I like about Pepe is it's still very speculative. They still have huge potential, but their downside is also limited because of the fact that they're already kind of like a blue chip of memes. Unlike a lot of new memes that you just don't know, they could get rugged or some liquidity get pulled and they could drop down 90%. I just don't see that for Pepe. So you limit your downside and still have that tremendous upside. So I'll round it out with those 5.
George, I love it. I appreciate you sharing your time. Comment down below which altcoin you were in the audience you were really connected with from George's list. George, I want to have you back on early next year, and we'll just revisit some of these takes as we go into 2025. Final thoughts for the Altcoin Daily Army.
I love it. I love to come back, and thank you for inviting me on once again. I think our audiences are very similar. I think we are not traders. We are fundamentalists. We cover the news. We put things together, two and two for the people. And I think we are on the same page. We believe that Bitcoin and crypto are going to have bright futures. 2025 will be a tremendous year. And right now, we just have to wait it out, get through the volatility, and the gains will naturally come back to us.
I love it.